didn't believe in miracles. Not since the war. The cold up in these mountains can freeze a man's soul solid if he isn't careful. And I wasn't. I was just trying to get through another sleepless night in the forest cabin I called home. Then I saw them. 2 figures, kneeling in the snow, trembling like leaves in a storm. Bare skin shining under moonlight, silver hair tangled by wind. Not human, not quite, and not dressed for any weather I've known. They didn't speak, didn't move, just stared into me, through me. If I left them there, they'd be dead by morning. But helping them, that would make me a target. Still, something inside me whispered, "Bring them in." So I did, and everything changed. The snow had started falling heavier that night. Thick flakes swirled through the pine trees like ghosts looking for somewhere to land. I was chopping firewood outside the cabin when I noticed it. Movement, just beyond the tree-line. At first I thought it was a deer, maybe injured, but as I stepped closer, the shape didn't match. And then I saw them. 2 women, no girls, really kneeling in the snow like they'd been dropped from the sky. Pale as moonlight. Hair so white it looked like light itself had touched it. Their clothes, if you could call them that, were scraps of gold, metal, and crystal, more suited for a dream than a winter storm. One of them raised her head slowly. Her eyes met mine. I'd seen a lot in my life. War zones, riots, bodies. But nothing like that stare. It wasn't fear. It wasn't a plea. It was trust. Or maybe the last flicker of it. Jenny always told me I had a savior complex. Maybe she was right. I dropped the axe. I didn't even think. I took off my coat, threw it over the closest one, and called to the other. "Come on. You'll die out here." They didn't speak, but they moved. Slowly, like their limbs were remembering how to live. I led them back to the cabin. My cabin. Half waiting for this to all vanish like a dream. Jenny was inside, boiling tea. She dropped the kettle when she saw us. "What the hell, Martin? Who are they?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because I didn't know. And yet, I did. They weren't from here. Their skin shimmered faintly under the firelight. Their eyes held stars. And even though they couldn't say a word we understood, they sat, huddled together on the floor, like they'd found the one safe place in a universe that wanted them dead. Jenny wrapped them in blankets. I made soup. No one asked questions. Not yet. That night, I sat near the fire and watched them sleep. One stirred in her dreams, lips twitching. She whispered something in a language I'd never heard. It sounded like music and heartbreak. I didn't sleep, not because I was scared, but because I knew something had begun, something that wouldn't let us go. I woke up to the sound of Jenny stirring the coals and the smell of burnt bread. She was never much of a cook, but she tried, especially when she was worried. "They didn't move all night," she whispered, nodding toward the girls bundled up near the fireplace. I followed her gaze. They were curled together like wild animals finally allowed to rest. Arms tangled, legs pulled to their chests, wrapped in my old blankets. The cabin wasn't built for visitors, and certainly not for whatever they were. But they looked small now, human almost, like lost kids who took a wrong turn in the universe and ended up on my doorstep. I didn't know what to do. "Do we call someone?" Jenny asked, her voice low. I shook my head. "And say what?" "Hey, we've got 2 half-naked aliens thawing out in our living room?" She sighed, handing me a chipped mug of something warm. "You always did find the broken things. They weren't gonna survive the night." Jenny glanced at me, something sharp in her eyes. "You brought them here because you saw yourself in them." I didn't answer, because maybe she was right. When the taller one stirred, we both tensed. Her eyes opened slowly, bright silver irises reflecting the firelight like mirrors. She scanned the room, then touched the other girl's shoulder gently. They exchanged a silent look that said more than words ever could. I stepped forward, slowly, crouching a few feet away. "You're safe now," I said. She didn't respond, but I could tell she was listening. Her eyes tracked every movement, every sound. The other girl sat up too, blinking hard, lips dry and trembling. I pointed to myself. "Martin, then to my sister, Jenny. I paused, then gestured to them. You? They hesitated. Then the smaller one reached out and touched her chest. Alia, she said softly. The other followed, voice a little stronger. Ilya. Their accents were not from here. Every syllable felt like it fought through an invisible barrier. But it was a start. I smiled. Ilya. Alia. Welcome, I guess. Jenny handed them slices of dry toast, and they sniffed it like it might explode. Ilya bit down first. Her eyes lit up just slightly. Alia followed. For a few minutes, no one spoke. Just chewing. Just breathing. Eventually, I pulled the wool blanket tighter around Ilya's shoulders. Her skin was still cold. I didn't know what her normal temperature was supposed to be, but I figured warm was better than dead. Jenny kept stealing glances at them. They don't look dangerous, she said half to herself. Neither did I when I got drafted. We both knew what that meant. The war changed me, left pieces missing. Trust wasn't something I gave out easily. But these girls? They weren't soldiers. They were refugees. Where are you from? I asked, even though I knew they wouldn't understand. Alia blinked, looked at her sister, and then raised her hand, pointing upward, toward the ceiling, toward the stars. I exhaled. Figures. Then something strange happened. Ilya reached forward, gently touching my forehead with her fingertips. I froze. Her skin felt electric, like static just before a storm. For a moment I saw things, not with my eyes, with something deeper. A planet, scorched and red, crumbling under its own weight. Children crying, ships fleeing, a fire swallowing cities made of glass. Ilya younger screaming, Alia holding her hand. A silver figure in black armor chasing them through a ruined corridor. Then it was gone. She pulled back, and I was breathing like I'd run 5 miles uphill. Jenny grabbed my arm. What the hell was that? They showed me, I said, heart pounding. They didn't come here by choice. Alia looked at me, eyes wide. No home, she said, struggling through the words. No safe, only run. It wasn't perfect English, but it was enough. Jenny stepped back, overwhelmed. I could see the wheels turning in her head. Logic versus instinct, safety versus humanity. Do you think they're being hunted? I nodded. I saw the one chasing them. Black armor. Tech I've never seen. We all went silent again. Outside, the wind picked up. Somewhere in the trees, an owl cried. Ilya reached for my hand. Her fingers wrapped around mine, not as a gesture of thanks, but as a lifeline. Like she didn't know how long she had before someone ripped it away. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I couldn't let them go. We're gonna figure this out, I told them. Their expressions didn't change, but I sensed the tiniest drop of hope surface behind those silver eyes. That night, Jenny cleared out the attic, and I rigged a heater up there. They needed warmth, privacy, safety. I couldn't sleep again, not because I was afraid of them, but because I was afraid of what would happen to them. This world didn't tolerate different very well, and nothing about Ilya or Alia was normal. They were too beautiful, too broken, too alien, and somehow too human to ignore. Days passed like quiet whispers, the kind of days where every sound feels louder than it is. Crackling firewood, Jenny's footsteps, the kettle hissing just before it boils. But it wasn't just the cold making us uneasy. It was the knowing. Knowing that something had brought those girls here, and knowing it hadn't finished looking for them. Ilya and Alia stayed upstairs most of the time. Jenny and I rotated bringing them food, helping them clean, and teaching them words in English. Slowly, awkwardly, but with more progress than I'd expected. Ilya picked up language faster, her focus sharp. Alia was quieter, more sensitive to sound and touch. She'd flinch at sudden noise, then smile shyly when she realized she was safe. Every night, I'd find myself staring up at the attic ceiling, hearing their footsteps above mine, wondering if I was changing, or if I'd already changed. It was one evening, a little over a week after they arrived, when Ilya came down the stairs alone. She was wearing one of Jenny's old sweaters. It hung off her shoulders like a blanket stitched from memories. She moved slowly, cautiously, as if testing each step not for creaks, but for trust. I was at the table sketching something, I don't know what, just lines, patterns, maybe trying to make sense of the storm in my head. She sat across from me without a word. Her fingers traced the edge of the wooden table. Her eyes met mine. "I learn," she said softly. "You're learning fast," I replied, smiling. She nodded. "Your world, cold, but warm here." Her hand tapped the center of her chest. I nodded slowly. "It's not always warm, but we try." She tilted her head. "Why?" I didn't know how to answer that. Maybe because the world owed me too much to quit caring. Maybe because she reminded me of someone I lost. Or maybe because I was tired of watching people fall without catching them. Instead, I said, "Because you didn't deserve what happened." Ilya looked down. "We ran. From war. From them." "The black armor guy," I said. "I saw him. You showed me." She flinched. "Just a bit. They want us back. Not for help. For silence." That word hit like a hammer. "They're still looking?" I asked. She nodded. "Track. Machine. Metal in sky. Follows." That's when it hit me. Drones. They weren't just watching. They were searching. I stood up and looked out the window toward the frozen woods. Dusk was bleeding into the trees, shadows stretching like fingers. Jenny walked in from the back, saw us both at the table, and paused. "What's wrong?" she asked. "They're still hunting," I said. "We don't have much time." That night we blacked out the windows. I pulled the old radio scanner out of the closet. Static mostly, but every once in a while it cracked with something strange. Not in English. Not in any language I recognized. But it repeated. Cold. Robotic. Measured. Jenny watched over Alia while Ilya stayed close to me. She didn't speak much, but when she did, it always felt important. "I feel your fear," she said once, when we sat near the fire again. "You're not wrong," I told her. "But it is not us you fear," she added. I turned toward her. Her silver eyes reflected the fire like mirrors again. It was like she could see past the surface. Not just thoughts, but wounds. "You're right," I admitted. "I'm scared of what the world will do to you. What it'll do to me. For protecting you." She reached out and placed her hand over mine. Her touch didn't scare me anymore. Felt grounding. "You are strong," she said, "but also breaking." That broke me a little more. "Everyone breaks," I whispered. She shook her head gently. "But not all help others while they do." Over the next few days, something shifted. We stopped seeing them as aliens, and started seeing them as people. Ilya smiled more. Alia laughed once when Jenny tried to explain socks. They watched old movies with us, black and white ones with barely any talking. They loved Chaplin, and toast, and snowflakes when they danced outside the window. They didn't ask for much. Just safety. Just kindness. Just not to be alone anymore. Then, 2 nights later, it happened. A sharp hum in the distance. Faint at first. Then closer. I stepped outside into the snow with my rifle slung across my back. The wind was too calm for that noise to be natural. Jenny followed, flashlight in hand. Above the trees just past the ridge we saw it. A flickering red light. Hovering. Scanning. A drone. Not ours. The shape was wrong. Too sleek. Too quiet. And glowing with symbols I didn't recognize. Jenny's face turned pale. "They found them." We ran back inside. Ilya and Alia were already on their feet, eyes wide, alert. "They come," Alia whispered. "Can you run?" I asked. "No," Ilya shook her head. "Not far. Not fast." I didn't hesitate. "Then we fight." Jenny looked at me like I was crazy. "You want to fight them? If we give them up, they'll be dead before sunrise." She hesitated, then sighed. "You're insane." I grinned. "You're still here." She rolled her eyes. "I hate how right you always are." I handed her the backup rifle. Ilya touched my hand again, and I felt something pass between us. Not words, not images this time, but a promise. Whatever happened next, we were in it together. The drone's red eye sliced through the window pane like a blade. The hum shook the cabin walls. Outside, snow fell in frightened silence. Inside, time snapped into sharp focus. I pressed my back to the doorframe, rifle raised. Jenny crouched beside me, her breath pluming in the cold air. Ilya and Elia stood between us, fragile silhouettes under the attic light. "They're coming," Ilya whispered. I nodded. "Stay low. Stay quiet." Above us, the drone's search patterns swept the treetops. A beam of light probed the porch. And then footsteps. Mechanical, precise, unyielding. I signaled Jenny. She moved like a ghost toward the kitchen door, clutching the second rifle. I slunk to the living room window, peered through the cracked blackout curtains. Two figures in black armor stepped onto the porch, rifles raised. Their visors gleamed. No hesitation. This was it. I took a breath, sighted the nearest soldier, and fired. The crack echoed like thunder in a cave. The soldier staggered, then dropped. Jenny's shot followed. Wood splintered where the second soldier's elbow had been. They were relentless, but we were desperate. Ilya whimpered, ducking behind the couch. Ilya grabbed her sister's hand, her silver eyes bright with resolve. "We help," she said. "Stay here." I barked, but she was already moving. Jenny dove for cover behind the table. Bullets thudded into the walls. Dust rained from the ceiling. Heat bloomed around me as I squeezed the trigger again and again. My lungs burned, my shoulders ached. But I didn't stop. A crash from the kitchen told me Jenny had broken through the back door. She circled wide, flanking the intruders. One by one, we picked them off. Then the bass roar of something larger, helicopter blades. The roof groaned. I looked at the attic stairwell. Ilya and Ilya were standing at the top, frozen. I shouted, "Go! Now!" They didn't need telling twice. I covered their retreat while Jenny finished the last soldier. I turned back, rifle raised, but there was no one left to shoot. Silence slammed into the cabin, heavy and absolute. Then the roof panel above our heads exploded inward. Splinters rained down. A squad of black-armored figures rappelled through the hole, weapons leveled. I fired until the rifle clicked empty. Jenny did the same. We exchanged a glance, fight or flight raging between us, then dove for the attic. Up the stairs, I heard Ilya cry out. I scrambled, grabbing her hand, pulling her and Ilya behind a wardrobe. Jenny brought up the rear, rifle dangling, heart pounding. The only exit was the attic window. Through it, the snowy slope plunged into darkness. The helicopter's searchlight beamed through the glass. I peered out. Below, the forest floor was a cathedral of white. No time for grace. I lifted Ilya. Jenny hoisted Ilya. I kicked out the window pane. Cold air slammed in. The drop was 20 feet, enough to break bones, but maybe not lives. "Jump on 3, I said. My voice shook. 1, 2, 3. We vaulted into the snow. I hit first, buried chest deep. Then Ilya landed against me, then Jenny and Ilya. We tumbled down the bank, a single frantic mass until we slammed into a drift at the bottom. The helicopter's searchlight swung overhead. I kicked snow at it, turned my jacket inside out so it wouldn't reflect. I pressed Ilya and Ilya against my chest, tucked Jenny's arm under mine. The forest swallowed us. Pine boughs shook snow like applause. We ran, feet slipping, lungs screaming for air. Branches whipped our faces. My rifle snagged on a sapling, but I yanked it free. Jenny went silent beside me. Determination warred with fear in her eyes. Ilya clung to her and Ilya to me. Behind us, the helicopter pilot followed, spinning its searchlight in widening arcs. We needed cover. Fast. I spotted a fallen log near a shallow creek. The water was half ice, half liquid, dark as ink. "Over here," I hissed, leading the way. We slid into the water's edge. The cold bit through layers, but at least we were out of sight. Jenny held Ilya's hand. I held Ilya's. Together, we sank below the bank, pressing our backs against the roots. The helicopter passed overhead, blades moaning. I felt its gaze wash over the creek, then drift away. After long, heart-stopping moments, Its motors faded into the night. We stayed motionless, waiting for any sound, boots, voices, radios. But nothing. Only the creek's muted burble and the forest's breathing. When I finally whispered, "I think they're gone," Jenny let out a breath so loud it echoed. Ilya pressed her hand to the back of Jenny's neck. Alia leaned into my side, her head on my shoulder. I closed my eyes, counting heartbeats. Exhausted, terrified, alive. At dawn, we emerged from the woods. The cabin lay in ruin behind us. Bullet holes, splintered wood, an upside-down rifle on the porch. But we had each other. We traveled until the sun was high, following the creek downstream. Somewhere in the distance, we found a hidden road. Jenny flagged down a passing vehicle, a truck full of hikers. They stared when they saw us. Two women in ragged clothes, silver hair tangled with pine needles. A man in camouflage, blood-stained, and a teenager clutching her rifle like a lifeline. But no one asked questions. They helped us anyway. I watched the unrest in Ilya's eyes soften as the hikers offered blankets and bottled water. Alia curled beside me, shivering, and I wrapped my arms around her. We were safe for now. Jenny climbed into the back of the truck with Ilya and Alia. She winked at me through the rearview mirror, and I nodded, stepping forward. Felt strange, like leaving behind the only home I'd ever known. But I knew this was more than a place. It was a promise. Promise that I would protect them no matter the cost. That they would have a chance to build a new life, even if it meant leaving the forest behind. As the truck rumbled away, I saw two small figures leaning out the window, hands pressed against the glass. Ilya waved, Alia smiled, hope shining in their silver eyes. I raised my hand until they were out of sight. Behind me, the cabin smoldered. Before me, the world stretched wide and unknown. And for the first time since I found them, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. A future. A home not defined by walls or snow or solitude, but by the bonds we forged in fire. I turned and walked back toward the forest, toward the cabin I would rebuild, toward whatever came next. Because home isn't a place. It's a promise you make and keep with the people you choose to save.